Let me guess. You thought that traditional archery was as simple as a stick and string and you're good to go. Or maybe you had an idea that it was more than just putting a string on a bow, but overall, maybe you just never thought about it. Well, I have to restring my bow, so I'm gonna show you. But first, we need a few things. Bow square, also called a T-square, has many names. Knocking points. Some folks don't use these, they use additional serving. Regardless, I use knocking points. Knocking pliers. Gonna need a replacement bowstring. So because I have various styles and types of bows, I have a lot of bowstrings. This is just replacements for the equivalent of a 62-inch bow. So I'm gonna need this one. And of course, extra bow stringing gear. I like to put string silencers on, the little furry things. Just makes it a tad quieter. I've already put on the traditional arrow at rest. Let me know if you guys want to see how that goes on, but for purposes of today, it's already on my bow. And my bow is fully prepped, so we're good in that regard. I'm also going to put on some limb dampeners. And then I think that's the gist of it. So yeah, let's string a bow. Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to put on these limb dampeners. Just another way to quiet the bow. One thing I do like to do is I kind of use my fingernail to kind of make the groove before I push everything down. Just because it makes sure it doesn't pull the limb dampener away when the string gets set on the bow. All right, so we have the limb dampeners on. As you can see, one, and you can see two. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to put the string on. Your bow string. So typically when you're restringing a recurve bow, the actual string length is gonna be 4 inches shorter than the length of the bow. So this bow is 62 inches, therefore this string is gonna be 58. Now with a long bow, it's a bit different. It's 3 inches, just to be mindful of that. Once you have your string, keep in mind that there's a big loop and a small loop. The big loop is always gonna be at the top of the bow, and the small loop is gonna be at the bottom. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and string it. So like I said, you'll slide the big loop onto the bow top limb first, and you'll go ahead and take the bottom loop. And this is just, you'll get experience over time, but you're gonna wanna add twists into the string, and you always want to make sure you're twisting in the direction that the string is already twisted in. So based on the string, it's already twisting this way, so I'm gonna add some twist into it. When you're restringing your bow, you're always going to want to string it to the top, so the big loop should be down. And if you have to unstring it and add or take away twists, you're gonna wanna make those twists done from the bottom, the small loop side. This is where you then get your bow or T-square, the throat of the bow fully strung, and seeing where the distance that it's crossing the string. So right here, we're at 8 1/4, which is where I like this bow brace height to be. There are recommended brace heights online, so if you're not sure what the brace height is of your bow, just Google it. For example, this is the Three Rivers Karen bow. We're gonna go ahead and set some knocking points on. Now remember earlier I mentioned that some people don't use knocking points, some people use extra serving, some people also only use one. I personally like to use two. It's just what I got comfortable with in the beginning, and I've never felt really need to change it. Although when I am shooting my Mongolian or Korean style, like SKB, any bow that I'm shooting off my hand, I will just have one knocking point. Just, the more you know. All right, so we got our knocking points out. Bow square, T-square. Many uses. We're gonna go ahead and gently clip it onto our string. You can hear it. And you slide it until it's just gently resting on the arrow shelf. Okay. So this is personal preference. This is what I do. I like to clip my arrow in and take kind of a look at where it's falling in order to adjust my knocking points. So I'll go ahead and tentatively, very gently, clamp one on. And then what I like to take the bow and hold it at a 90-degree angle with the string. You don't ever want it to be like super low or super high, because that's gonna cause your arrow to be knock high or knock low. Now I noticed that I think it needs to be a tad higher. So I'm gonna slide it up just a smidgen, like not even an eighth, like very, very minimal amount. So now we'll take a look. Good. So you don't want these to be right up against your knock. You want it to be a little bit of a gap, and you also don't want your knocks super loose or super tight. It's a whole separate tutorial. I don't want to make you guys have a 20-30 minute video to watch here. So I just put it on the string and I'm gently clamping it. Great, so now you guys can see I have 2 knocking points. Maybe you can see 2 knocking points on my bow. Next step is string wax, which I did not bring over here. And yes, I put on slippers because I had to go inside earlier and I just haven't put my shoes back on yet. So, string wax. This is the brand I use. It works. What we'll do is go ahead and take the bow all the way up to the top. I like to do both sides. You just want to gently, applying some pressure, rub, squeeze it in, I should say, up and down the bowstring. And ultimately, you want to put enough on so when you touch the string, it's giving you that tacky feel, but not overly tacky. You don't want it to be like gunked on. You shouldn't really be able to see it caked onto your string. It should just be able to feel it. My neighbor is out on her ladder. Oh, this is awkward. So I'm going to switch to a voiceover now because I'm embarrassed because my neighbor is literally right there. So enjoy the voiceover. You literally use this for everything. So in order to install your string silencers, you want to go ahead and unstring your bow. And here I'm using the bow square to measure 3 inches below where the red meets the black string, and that's where I'm starting to go ahead and wrap around. The great thing about the string silencers is you want to make sure you're wrapping it in the direction of the string. And you don't want it to be loose, you want it to be taut, tight, with a little bit of a gap sticking out of each side so it doesn't, come off the string when it's unstrung. And I'll show you guys in a second. I'm applying pressure at the top as well as twisting and holding it tight so it doesn't come undone as I just released it. But that's one of the ways I found to be helpful, as well as putting my foot on my bow, holding it, but I don't want to do that right now because again, my neighbor is right there on the ladder and that would look weird. Again, I'm going to check the brace height to make sure it's good. 8 1/4, perfect. These are not the best jobs I've ever done in the entire life, but you can kind of see here, you want it to be fluffy, you can fluff it up a little bit, and when you string it, it's your time to kind of like smoosh it or tighten it as you need to. Yeah, these are just called beaver balls. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Absolutely not necessary, but typically once you find something that works for you, that's what people do. It works for me, I do it. Bit of adjustment. When I go to shoot this bow, I'm going to be watching to see if when my arrow leaves the shelf, if I see it kick up and then straighten, or if I see it kick down and then straighten after it releases the string, that's a notice to me that I need to come back up here and adjust my knocking points accordingly. So, if it's the top one is going to be too low, it's going to cause it to kick up as it releases just because it's going to be angled kind of like this versus, straight. And you need to come back, your pliers, adjust them accordingly, where this comes into play as well, because you can literally use the markings to help you adjust when you need to. But yeah, in the short, that is how you string a recurve bow. Hope this helped. Hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry there was a period where I was kind of silent staring at the camera, but I'm just awkward.